welcome to another episode of the Chris Rothmack Show, the first episode of the year. Hi, Chris. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you guys had a really great celebration coming into 2025.
Great to hear that. And for those who are joining us for the first time, in this show, we discuss every week about the latest developments in AI, the strategies that companies are following in order to implement AI in their organizations, and pretty much how businesses can integrate this technology such that they can become more efficient and therefore get to better outcomes. And with that in mind, we have prepared for this show an agenda where we want to cover what has been predicted for this year in the space. So there has been so many developments last year and the previous year. We're now in year 3 of the Gen AI revolution. And one constant trend has been, are we headed towards an end of this? Is this something that is running out of steam, or will it be developing further? And with that in mind, we have some predictions from relevant figures and those in the space on what is supposed to happen this year. I would say that this also gives us the opportunity for us to propose what we see as our ideas and the development for this year. So, Chris, let us get started. You might remember that last year we had a large discussion on NVIDIA. It seems that by now this is like a household name. Everyone and their dog knows what NVIDIA is about. And a constant question that we have in our show was, is NVIDIA's monopoly on the GPU market, which is the underlying technology for everything Gen AI related, is this something that will come to an end? Is it something that it will remain? What's the current situation? And the prediction that I have here from Vivek Ramaswamy and Sabrina Wu is that 2025 will be a good year for specialized French chip providers like Grok or Sambanova or Cerebras. And the balance of power starts a shift in this new paradigm. So they're basically saying that NVIDIA will start losing market share because there will be new entrants, or those that are already in the market will start gaining more relevance. Do you have any thoughts about that, Chris?
I think that's a really important question. And I'm sure a lot of investors and maybe even people here on the show own NVIDIA stocks. And most likely they're thinking, or we're thinking, okay, do we now need to pull out? Is it maybe even time to double down on NVIDIA? And truth to be told, if we just stay with the stock market for a second, actually only NVIDIA is the one that skyrocketed last year. I mean, look at some of the other semiconductor companies like Micron Technology, like AMD, like Intel. They're
Yeah.
actually down by quite a bit. And of course, you could argue that competition is eating up. It's a race to the top, etc. But as of now, it stands that NVIDIA is still riding that monopoly and enjoying quite a bit of premium on that. However, of course, if you look into history and if you look at any other market, um, time or competition will eventually catch up. And I think there are also a lot of technology companies that are in the AI space thinking about building or reverse engineering their own chips in order to be less reliant on a supply chain with NVIDIA. What about yourself, Rod?
I agree that, so as you were saying, in the stock market, we are not seeing, so this Gen AI wave, we're not seeing this craze that has been going around now for 2 years, reflected in everyone else that is not NVIDIA. So we have, so as you mentioned here, AMD, Intel. Of course, the companies with Intel, they've been having so many troubles. However, if we look at reports from their latest hardware, it does seem that they have already got things under control. And therefore, now when people compare the performance from an NVIDIA GPU against what others are offering, they come quite close. Sometimes even those alternatives perform better. So for me, the biggest question has been that the topic of ecosystem, where NVIDIA has developed this massive ecosystem among developers, among those who create AI applications and all type of technologies for this stack. They have pretty much here a stronghold, whereas everyone else is a little bit like playing catch up. And that has been maybe the largest differentiator, not so much on the hardware side. I don't think that this year that will be still the case. But I do think that, for example, especially for large organizations, that we think of, for example, like a bank and so on, where they say, hey, now we will invest on 500 so GPU cards. Now we'll be having a large commitment in the space. They might be questioning if this makes sense because, for example, in the case of like Grok, I was having a discussion with someone about doing an AI application for voice, and that person was trying to compare prices among different providers. For example, how much it costs with OpenAI to start using a voice application. The idea is that you want, for example, to have this like a customer support agent, and then instead of being like a text, it'll be a voice support agent. And the person was surprised, and me as well, when we look at the prices from Grok. Whereas, for example, with ChatGPT, with the OpenAI and so on, so you will pay, do you say something, $200 per month? Yeah, just so he random number. So with Grok, you're paying less than 10. So the gap in between was massive. And I have not yet used Grok. However, I think if the price difference between something like OpenAI or just having your own deployment of GPUs and something like Grok, it is yeah, like 10 times or 20 times, then at least some companies will start using more Grok.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think the other question one could also ask is semiconductor companies that, let's say we call them pure ones, right? Like the Microns or Intel or whatever. I think there are also the big technology companies that are looking into the space or cloud providers even. And I mean, just taking the example of Apple released the iPhone 16, which obviously comes with a set of AI features or infrastructure, let's say, to really have a rollout, most likely 2025. I mean, we talk about, what's going to happen this year. This could be one trend and one way that the market is going. And so, thinking about Apple being a company that actually very much so wants to have control over their entire supply chain, I could actually imagine them also being a serious contender to go into hardware and to actually try to build something, a GPU for their own purposes, and therefore also reducing the reliance on any of the, chip manufacturers. What's your take on that?
Absolutely. So, like you can hear maybe in a different buckets where we have, for example, like general consumer like us, likely. So for us, we'll continue using either OpenAI technology or we'll be making use of, for example, Apple Intelligence, so on devices. So these categories rather well defined. Then we have SMB. Likely SMB will stay with OpenAI, and then more and more, for example, so Anthropic is gaining a foothold on the market, but this will be likely maybe like a duopoly, so, or maybe like a couple more entrants will be in the space. Then you have here the large enterprises, where here I see the possibility for new chip manufacturers that are not NVIDIA that have here larger market share. And then, of course, we have, so as you were saying, so here cloud providers and really those who are developing the models. So, for example, there have been constant discussion if OpenAI will release their own chipsets. And for companies like Anthropic, OpenAI, so Cohere and so on, and of course, Google, it makes sense to say, hey, why are we using NVIDIA? We, we, we have our architecture and we have our own platform. We have also the talent, and we don't need really to develop for anyone else, right? So when you have the situation where you're trying to do, for example, like a new architecture of chips and so on, so the GPU cards, then you need to think about all type of corner cases. But if you're only saying, hey, we want to have like a better ChatGPT, and for that we'll do a tailor architecture, then I can see that they can do it on their own and they don't need to be really dependent on NVIDIA. So if we think so here further on this topic of that the ones that we see here, Chris, the current market cap of Nvidia is over 1 trillion. We have these multiple competitors and so on. Another topic that we are not yet discussing is on so energy consumption. So we're saying, and you brought it a little bit so with Apple Intelligence. Right now we are making use of all the GPUs in data centers, so it's maybe not necessarily the best for the environment and so on, and more we're seeing consumption on device of the models, and as a result this is more efficient. Do you think that from, let's say, like a regulatory perspective, or maybe from just like a consumer sentiment. They will start saying, yes, AI from servers, AI from an open AI and so on is like evil. In previous years, there was some discussion like that, for example, with the cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and so on, where they were saying, no, this is like so bad for the environment. And if we think about this universe of cryptocurrencies, there were some whose only argument was saying we're much more energy efficient than working with Bitcoin. So do you think that this can become something that it can be either like as a marketing strategy for these manufacturers to come and say we're more energy efficient, or just from consumer sentiment saying, hey, we need a good do good for the environment, so let us use technologies that are less energy intensive?
Yeah, honestly speaking, I think we're talking about two different kinds of markets in the sense that one is more B2C while the other one may be a bit more B2B. And let me explain what I mean by that, right? So, the crypto market, you and I, we can like go onto a platform and trade coins and there's a, let's say, a direct user or consumer interface. We transact, we understand, maybe people will go and do some research and understand how mining works, etc. Whereas I think when we talk about data centers, when we talk about GPUs, processing power, etc., that is very much on the, let's say, operator. So the operator in this case would be an open AI, right? And they would have um, that type of energy consumption. And the final product may not necessarily be associated with a lot of energy consumption. I think that's just maybe a consumer perception in the market. It's just like not necessarily as direct as maybe other industries. And especially, I think the question then is, thus can the consumer do something about it to make it more sustainable? And I think that's really hard, and that's also the reason why you see that if you think about sustainability, a lot of consumers think about, okay, can I reduce my waste or plastic footprint? Can I travel less and reduce my carbon footprint? Can I buy more sustainable fabrics or upcycled or recycled textiles in order to be more sustainable? So I think there's an element of control here that a consumer wants that may not be necessarily reflected in AI per se. So I do think that the conversation on AI is more around the data privacy, data protection, so something that is directly concerning the consumer. But indeed, of course, we think about energy consumption and energy costs, especially also from a business point of view, right? And so here we do see that that's actually a tremendous cost. I think in one of the episodes we've done last year, we spoke about the energy consumption for AI on data centers alone would make up 8% by 2030, 8% of GDP by 2030. In the US economy coming in from 3%. So that's actually a huge jump just by consumption of energy that
Yes.
the AI sector, the booming AI sector is currently consuming.
Absolutely. Another thing I was also coming to mind now that you were mentioning is so this jump, but also these consumer decisions is there has been a massive explosion of ESG startups and all these carbon footprint, carbon counting, and so on. It seems that almost every day there's a new one coming on the market. So I wonder if, from a B2B perspective, given that there is a big push towards this type of like carbon counting technologies and just the software for that, that people start seeing in the reports, hey, so you're using here this AI provider, and so this is impacting your carbon footprint. If that will push companies that were saying we want that choose AI providers and AI technologies that are better for the environment, so that also our reports look better.
I definitely think that there is conversation. I don't know how much it would be a decisive factor for AI companies. I mean, first of all, we need to understand that these AI startups especially are obviously private owned companies. And then sort of from a reporting perspective, it's very voluntary, I would say. I think though that if we look into the VC community, more and more investors are or do care about the footprint and do have an ESG index for their portfolio companies. So I think that's sort of like keeping things in check and balance, I would say. But again, I think the main theme when it comes to sort of the AI let's say, innovation or startup space is really the race towards the top, or kind of like um, try to be a duopoly, or try to like actually swim along. And really, that's about speed, and it's also about like being able to reduce your costs and also potentially reduce the reliance of some of these big suppliers that we just spoke about, like NVIDIA.
Yes. Yeah. And going on to the next prediction here is also connected to that, is that not only we have the situation of energy consumption and what these providers can actually deliver, but also the other thing that might potentially push towards diversity in architectures is this prediction from Ilya Sutskever, who until recently he was the chief scientist at OpenAI. Now he went and did his own company and so on. He's one of the largest luminaries in the AI space, and he's predicting that. So a topic that we also had in some of our shows, data is not growing. We only have one internet. At the same time, the models for AI are growing and growing. So for training, the way how we prepare these AI models will unquestionably end as we know it, and develop new ways how we create these AI models. We have been seeing some signs of that in that, for example, where is it talk about like a GPT-5, and where is the talk about like the next big models, it has been relatively quiet. And that kind of hints that whatever new developments are coming might be impacted by a constraint on data available. So it is maybe a little bit of like peak oil. Do you think we'll hit like peak data in this case, Chris?
I mean, we already did, no? I mean, we spoke about synthetic data. Synthetic data basically meaning data that was generated by an AI and then fed back into the AI. And essentially, what we have is a data collapse. It's almost like everything like collapses into a black hole. That's sort of like my sort of like image that I have in front of my eye. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think we did already hit that data peak, at least from like public data standpoint, which is also I think the reason why, and also I guess one of my predictions for this year, where we actually see more companies implementing proprietary data and you feeding that into models. So you get that type of, let's say, model diversity, or agent diversity, by using these type of proprietary data sources. But yes, from a public point of view, we are hitting not necessarily we're hitting, because to be honest, every day we generate new data, right? Every day people like snap up a new picture, and then that's like basically a generation of new data, or we text and it gets swallowed up. But I think what we need to compare is the rate and speed of generation versus consumption, right? And so, yes, we generate a lot of data, but that actually gets swept away and consumed immediately by these models. And I think, and maybe Rod, you can share a bit of the technical perspective, but it seems like there needs to be really diverse, or diversity, or how to put it, like immensely diverse type of data from previous data in order to really help push the ceiling of the next model generation. But that's just my hypothesis. I don't know what your take is on that.
Well, I was thinking when you were saying that was, so you're saying every day we generate massive amounts of new data and so on. But I was thinking, how much of that is really like novel? So just to put like a simple example, so we go, let's say like on holidays, the Paris, and then we take a picture of the Eiffel Tower. How many pictures of the Eiffel Tower do we need? And so sure, every day there are like thousand new pictures that coming from the Eiffel Tower, right? So from different angles, zoom in, zoom out, and so on. But at some point, the Eiffel Tower remains the Eiffel Tower, right? There is no new uh, information gain from that. And
Exactly right. That's exactly the point that I was trying to make. Like the similarity of new data towards the existing data sets is probably not that big, or it's very incremental. And hence, that's the reason why my hypothesis that the model only learns much slower than maybe in the first, let's say 1 year of time, that the models had to like really swallow all the data and really, perfect the answers.
yes, so what I've been seeing is like online, I get approached by so many companies that are offering data annotation or positions, so saying, hey, earn like, so it almost feel like this, so do you want to earn like quick money fast or something? So we say, oh, like we pay, I don't know, $200 per hour, whatever it is. and you will be solving some math task, or you will like doing some, and it's pretty much a little bit of like annotation and maybe like a Amazon so labeler role, where you get basically some exercises that you are answering, that you're completing, with the objective of preparing data that will be available for example, these models. So is so this discussion of, yes, we have new data, but the question is how much of that is novel, and as a result, companies and organizations are coming with ideas on how can we force the generation of things that can be relevant, that can be new, and that can be used for that. So here also, like another line of thought that I have is that this might offer opportunities of, for example, for startups in so here, not only the data space, so new entrants, but also new architectures for chipsets, but then as well, just in general on how can we be just more efficient in how we use our models and so on. So here, maybe we had in our show that there was this estimate that by 2028 we'll completely run out of data in the world. So there will be no new novel sources available by that. Um, but potentially, given that we have this constraint and that there is not much available, then this will, make us resourceful and creative and so on, and then have new approaches to that.
Again, I would look at it a bit differently because I think this running out of data is maybe just a way to like get eyeballs, to be very frank with you. Because again, I don't think it's a static thing, it's a dynamic thing. Like we generate so much data every single day. I think you were just talking about two things. You were talking about the data generation, origination, and then the second part being like the cleaning up of data to ensure data quality. And that's where the labeling comes in, right? And that's where we both got approached, like label data in order to help the AI learn. But maybe coming back to the first point on origination, again, I don't think there will be such a scenario of like we're going to run out of data by 28. I think again we need to compare rates of creation, right? So here, what we talk about is origination of data or information. So, for example, if an author writes a book, that would be a new novel piece of information, or not even new, to be very honest. It's probably just a plot that's very similar. It talks about people and politics or whatnot, or love or any other theme. However, the way it's composited is obviously then again, hopefully new and unique, the story, right? And so I think the more interesting question is like how fast can human beings develop new original ideas, thoughts, and information to be fed to an AI? And honestly speaking, it's also not trying to be complete in data or information. It's just like making the AI think more like a humans. That's probably how I would look at it.
You're right. You're right that it's a question of how original it can be. And recently, we were also discussing how, for example, on LinkedIn, a large part of the LinkedIn content that's coming out by now, the posts that we're seeing, they're just copy paste from someone is prompting on ChatGPT and then just having the answer. And it's something where, so if one gets to read many of these posts, start identifying patterns that there are always phrases and formulations that are very, let's say, like ChatGPT-esque. And as soon as you see, you say, hey, this person obviously was using ChatGPT for that. There's no question about that. So here will be like the discussion, the debate, and the challenge on, yes, we need to create new things, but if on one side we're being less creative and then just copy pasting what we're getting, and also on the other side, or just regurgitating what's coming from these models, then it's also likely we might not get the novelty that we're expecting.
I mean, it comes back to a very philosophical question of like, where does creativity originate from? And is there creativity in the first place?
Yes, and now that we are also touching the topic of like startups, new models, and opportunities for them, well, there is here the counter argument a little bit of here from our third prediction for our show on market consolidation, where they're expecting that this year, 2025, will start the consolidation of the generative AI space. There will be more acquisitions. Where one of the trials that we had in our show was not only that NVIDIA was having this big boom in their stock price, but also that if we look at other entrants in space that are not AI related, so that are just pure SaaS and so on, they were not having this reflection that all the money that was going in public markets and also in private ones was specifically for AI related companies. And by now we are in basically the year three of the AI boom, meaning many of those companies that were founded in the last couple of years, maybe 2021, 2022, in the last year and so on, this year they need to have a new funding round. Plus, on top, we have the very large players who have by now gathered billions. They have these massive war chests. What do you think, Chris? Do you think that we'll continue seeing new startups popping up like mushrooms every day, or do you think that this year we'll be seeing much more consolidation, acquisitions, and companies closing shop?
I'm not sure if we're going to see more or less. I think it's also tied to the overall, let's say, startup and investment environment right now. And I think one thing for sure is we're really out of this era of growth at all cost. I think people and investors care so much more about profitability. I think especially with the COVID, let's say, COVID time, the post COVID effects also. I think the entire industry may be a little bit subdued at this point. I think also we see that companies are much longer in private mode and not going to the stock markets. That essentially also means that investors will see their returns much later. Lots of bridge rounds need to be found. So I do believe that M&A and acquisitions in general is another way or route that a lot of startups are considering. I think that's just generally speaking for the entire startup environment currently. So obviously then we look into AI, and this is obviously a very hot topic. A lot of investors are going into the space. They're really trying to find the golden nugget, if you want. And also here from an AI standpoint, I do think that that's it's basically you have the big companies building the infrastructure layer, the model layer, and then you see all these verticals popping up, and you see a lot of startups within the legal space, the healthcare space, the let's say just enterprise space, that are trying to build for specific use cases and for specific sectors and companies. And I think that acquisition in those markets make a lot of sense because as we just spoke about the data sets and the proprietariness of data, it's much easier for companies to buy specific AI solutions that already are trained on certain data sets that are relevant to the specific market sector that a company is working in. So I think that's really more from like, let's say a corporate trying to like buy some AI features and services. I think on the other hand, obviously also OpenAI is shopping around, right? I mean, first as an investor per se to like invest into use cases, features that are relevant, but also maybe to even shortcut some of the R&D that obviously needs to go into, developing the next model or developing the next feature and service. So also here I see even the technology or AI companies, the big ones, going on a spree to acquire smaller use cases that have been very niche, that have been very good in building accuracy and reliability within certain niche.
And you have an ear on the startup world. You're always very attuned with what's happening there, and you have a great connection with very early stage teams. Which trends are you seeing is when young teams decide, hey, let's do a company together? Right now, are people saying, hey, let's do, I don't know, so X, but with AI? Or are they thinking, hey, this is already like saturated? Or which trends are you seeing there?
I think most so I would look at it from like three categories, to be honest. Right now there's a lot of, let's say, friendly speaking, it's like repositioning or rebranding, right? So everything that is now AI based, AI something, and I think that's maybe the majority of companies. Obviously, everyone tries to ride the AI wave, not necessarily because everyone believes in AI, but because it actually gets the attention of investors in general, right? Which is then the challenge of an investor to really dig through all the decks that they get and really figure out which are the real AI nuggets that they actually are looking to invest into. Then so that's basically one category, and I would imagine that that's actually the biggest category. I think the second one is obviously more on a technology perspective. I mean, we earlier in the show we had some more technology founders that are building middleware or infrastructural layers on top of some of these models. So those are some companies that are pure AI, maybe even like built in the era when OpenAI actually came about. So I think that's the second one, and then obviously we talk about maybe even foundational companies like Mistral and so forth that are really trying to build, competitors to OpenAI models. Although at this point in time, I would say that that's already really hard in terms of just catching up on the speed of development. I think we see this especially also in China now that people are still catching up, but maybe give it another year or so, it might be even on par. Or even I read an article that now Chinese models are even as good as Gemini and OpenAI. So I think this will be like the third category of companies. But again, I think that particular category number three around really building basic foundational models is a very costly, high investment, high burn rate type of game that not a lot of countries can actually play.
Yes. So from also what I get to see is that really is a little bit of let us rethink how an existing problem, an existing service can be done with an AI first mindset, especially for example, a lot of these very process heavy that requires a lot of like copy pasting here and there, that is maybe like labor intensive or that just requires a lot of people involved. So in the let's say like bookkeeping, professional service and so on. I think that many are saying, hey, this can be automated a lot with AI technologies. And as a result, this is where we're seeing many AI startups headed to. And this may be also to our next prediction, Chris, where we have here John K. Thompson, who is the global head of AI at Ernst& Young. And he's basically saying that 2025 will be the year of AI agents. He's expecting that we'll see millions of agents deployed. AI agents has also been a constant last year in our show, but also in other spaces. However, we, and we've spoken a little bit of, for example, Salesforce. They have this agent force, and a couple of large companies have been doing something like that. Nevertheless, you do not see that every company will become. We have not seen that every company is an AI agent company first, and second, maybe like the type of products that we're seeing are not yet really like agentic. So we're far away from saying millions of agents. We're maybe having like a couple dozens and some that are agentic in their functionality and their features. Do you think that 2025 is the year of the AI agent?
I mean, let's take two steps back, right? What's an AI agent? An AI agent is a machine that talks to another machine to complete a task. Let's say B2C level, it would be I want a flight to be booked from A to B, and then basically that AI agent takes care of everything, and that's it. I think on a business level, I mean, we spoke with Automated and Bourdin, for example, where it's about, for example, you get an invoice and you want it to be automatically filled into a certain CRM system, perhaps, or like finance system, and it does it automatically, and you have an AI agent do this for you. Um, I do think that maybe on the B2B side, we will see more development or deployment of AI agents. I think when it comes to the consumer side, I think one is a certain resistance, not only because of data privacy and all this type of things, but also just simply because we like to talk to humans. Yeah. And as we spoke about it in a couple of other episodes, the chatbots that we have in customer support are so stupid still that that's a prejudice that AI agents need to overcome and provide a really good customer experience for people to start adopting it. And I believe that that's going to take a bit more time than maybe for B2B. How about yourself? What do you think?
You're right that it is good to frame the conversation of first what is an AI agent, and that took my horn. I'm actually working on a course on AI agents and so on because I do believe that this year will be the year of the agents. My theory here is that every SaaS company will become an agentic company because The way I see AI agents is pretty much enabling an AI model, let's say like GPT, whatever it is, no matter which model, that have access the other services. These services can be, for example, the internet, can be, for example, sending emails, can be sending a Slack message. So instead of having the model, let's say, kept inside a box and whose only task is providing you with answers, giving the possibility that this model can interact with the environment in some fashion. And for example, if we think about, you were saying the example of booking a flight and so on, this will be from the consumer perspective. But let's think about from the travel provider perspective, like the Expedias and Booking.com of this world and so on. For them with agents, it will mean when they're, for example, giving you the list of results and so on. For the most part, often these results are the hard coded. So where you say, hey, I need to book a flight from, I don't know, LA to Tokyo or something, and they will be preferred providers because they have already some contractual agreement. It's already predefined. First, I will show these airlines and so on. Now, if it will be conceived as a pure agentic solution, then the agent could decide real time. And right now, it makes sense that instead of working with the Japanese airline to provide the best result, I will show, no say, I don't know, like a Chinese airline or something like this. So this could be so one way that decisions are made real time based on who is offering right now the best price. Also, for example, if we think about so the process of just suggesting the route and so on, for this, that might require information from the internet. What's currently so new and so on. So you're saying, hey, don't fly, let's say that to Tokyo because right now there is maybe like a strike there. Fly instead to Osaka or something because there will be no strike there and so on. So information that will not be necessarily available on the databases of the provider, the model can go and then inquire online in news sites and so on, and based on this, make the decision. So I think that pretty much every feature that we have in every software that we use can have some sort of automation that is resemblant of an AI agent.
Definitely. And I mean, there was a meme circulating around. I had sent it to you. Basically, the whole point of the meme was people believe it's magic, but also the result really depends on the input you put in, just to put it mildly. And to be honest, for me, it's like, I mean, what you described, some of these use cases you can already do with even today's business logics, right? And you would, like, very deterministically have, software run different processes for you. And I suppose the addition to, or, this whole craze around AI agents is that AI agents can now make more flexible decisions for you given different circumstances, as you were showing in the flight example. But I mean, just to give an anti-example to this case, I was very happy to learn about this new AI agent feature, which could extract an invite, a date, or any of those date-related information from an email and add it to my Gmail, to my calendar. So everything in the Google environment, right? So Gmail, and then put it into the Google Calendar, and it absolutely failed. It just didn't work. And I was like, okay, maybe it's going to take a bit of time. And the way it was supposed to work is, okay, I have this, let's say, this booking, this flight booking confirmation, and I forwarded to a specific email address, and then it would automatically add it to my calendar, and it just didn't happen. It came back, oh, I couldn't extract the data, can you please let me know what you're looking for? And I even typed it out. I'm like, okay, I'm flying, I don't know, from this point to this point this day, please edit. And it still wasn't able to figure that out. And so I think, there are some of these initial barriers. I'm sure this is going to get resolved very quickly, but I think this is also a bit of a trial and error, and the reason why I believe B2B is definitely the early adopter in this game rather than the B2C consumer.
You're making this is a very interesting point, and it's very true on. And so the way I would frame it is the functionality already exists in some other way. But if we think about how large organizations work, that has never stopped the start massive organization projects, massive restructuring projects, and so on. So, for example, if we think about microservices and this type of architectures, so all of a sudden something becomes the big topic that every every enterprise needs to have. And then the CIO comes and say, "Hey, we'll start like this multi-year migration from system A to system B because it will allow us for more flexibility." And then there is touted some potential cost savings. Is that often this doesn't materialize? Often turns out that maybe in the end it will be more expensive, but yet there is the fantasy that we're bringing now here innovation and so on. So I think that there's that. Your second point on, so hopefully it will solve fast. I'm not sure. So I think that some of these things are just baked in the way that currently our architectures work, and therefore they might not have a straightforward solution, and that might be in the end like a negative side of this adoption. However, I do think that the fantasy behind is so high, and also the need for innovation to present something new, that I do think that so many organizations will say, "Hey, we'll be adopting this because this is how we see the future," and they might just reinvent the wheel of in their systems. Potentially, these systems might end up being maybe less good than what they have right now, but nevertheless, this will, I would think, it will be like a massive boom for all type of AI integrators. So I think that here, looking at IBMs and Accenture of the world and so on, they have so many projects this year just on doing AI agent migration of whatever internal system those organizations are using. And thinking about now, Chris, so for what's coming also this year, we were talking about Apple Intelligence and also already the first prediction on energy consumption. Another one that is coming so from Maxime Labon, so who is very much a little bit of an AI influencer on so LinkedIn and other social media, is that HLLMs, so the large language models who are on device, they'll go from feasible to popular. Or if you think now, for example, this Apple Intelligence that we are having at the moment is pretty much a little bit of like a wrapper on OpenAI. However, the devices, the iPhones, and also of course Android devices, they're extremely powerful, enabling the use of these models on device instead of going and then calling a server. Therefore, this means you don't require an internet connection. Therefore, it means that responses can be potentially faster because there is no latency behind, there is no external service. And of course, there is privacy and so on. Do you think that on one side, maybe not if this is coming or not, but you think that consumers will care? Do you think that if they say, hey, I have an AI on my iPhone, will that make a change or they're only interested in the end result?
I mean, as far as I understand, the iPhone 16 hasn't sold as much. I mean, I would need to double check this, but I think everyone is sort of waiting perhaps for it to really launch. Actually, my friend has an iPhone 16 and he was very happy about it, showing me all the little features. Like, for example, in a picture that you took, you can remove stuff from the background, and it's really the Apple intelligence that understands the context of a person in a picture and remove certain distractors. So I guess that's the level of intelligence you currently have on your phone. And I think as of now, this makes the iPhone 16 probably just an incremental improvement from like an iPhone 15. I think it's yet to be seen what other real use cases you can develop. And if the convenience as well as the value you get from having an intelligence in your pocket, let's say, is higher than maybe your concern for data privacy. So, in other words, I can give a more concrete example. So, for example, in China, a lot of data is shared actually via shopping, right? Like on Taobao or any of the equivalent e-commerce platforms that are, you can buy anything on it. And I believe even Alibaba has data on 90% of all Chinese internet users, and we talk about, almost maybe 800 or 900 million people having internet access on their phones. And they are super happy to give up their data, or they don't really care so much about data privacy, because the value you get from giving your data, or giving the access to your data, is that you get a much better, more personalized experience of shopping. And so I think in this case, this just shows and illustrates that as long as you can really provide more value or more convenience, I think there will be a huge number of people that will be willing to try it out, to be open to it, and yeah, have intelligence in their pocket.
Yes, you're right. You're right that so here it will be like a differentiator. So for manufacturers, and given that these days everyone has a smartphone, the question why the upgrade is it becomes maybe relevant if this has AI functionality. How often do you upgrade your phones, Chris? So when did you buy your last size smartphone?
I mean, to be very honest, it was this year, but I only got a iPhone 14 because honestly speaking, to me, it's basically become a commodity, right? It's
Exactly.
nothing
Yes.
special. It's nothing that excites me. I complain about the price because I think it's still so
Outrageous.
overpriced. Actually, it's a second hand phone, almost new, and I pay 50% of the price. I'm like, okay, uh, whatever. Does that make sense? I don't know how you think about it.
Exactly like you do. So like last time I bought a phone was about 3 years ago, and it works perfectly well. I don't see a need to upgrade. So sure, there are some benefits and so on, but I do think what I have is like 80%, so as good as like the latest one. And as you were saying, like the just prices where you think, hey, this costs much more than a laptop, or so pretty much like is the most expensive electronic that these days people have, right? Like you can pay like up to $2,000, euro, whatever it is, just for a phone. I think why would I pay so much for that? And thinking to this, so now, so as our last part of our show to wrap it up is, what are like your three predictions for this year on AI? And maybe so you have some time to come up with some of them. I can give first mine. So my three predictions for this year. One is I already mentioned that, so I do believe that this year will be the year of the AI agents, so that every SaaS company will try to become agentic. And so you are seeing this even a little bit from the investor perspective, that I think these days on investor websites, you don't see anymore SaaS as a category that they invest on, but they call it application layer. So I do think that they will start calling it agentic layer or whatever it is. But I think one, every SaaS company will start adding some sort of agentic functionality in their products. The second one I think is AI will become much more political, in that we're seeing it a little bit, for example, with X.com, Elon Musk, that people are saying, hey, he's like so far right, here's that, and so on. And some users have been alienated from his platforms based on his positions. Even maybe the product might not be influenced, or maybe yes, but I do think that consumers will be much more focused on what's the political position of the organization. We had, for example, in one show about some criticism that some models were considered like woke models based on what they were generating as a result. So, given the societies that we live in, there might be likely this division across the AI space where companies and users will say, does this model reflect my political views, yes or no? And then use that. Plus the geopolitical side of saying, where is this model coming from? Is this from this geography? Then likely I will not use it because some risk behind, or maybe it doesn't align with my values. And then my third one is, I do think that this year will be the year of AI generated video, where so video becoming more and more popular everywhere. For example, our show being a video podcast. However, one of the challenges that we have is just generating video, processing video is complicated. You require so many things to have like a good quality video, plus post processing, editing, and so on. Is something that is limited for few people. Yet, I would think that these days everyone consumes video. So I think that we're seeing a trend where people read less, and less, and then they watch more and more and more. Therefore, there will be like there's a very big demand for this type of making video easy to create, easy to consume, and easy to edit. And we're discussing on the topic of providers of models. They might not be able to get new, more powerful models. They might not be GPT-5, but however, OpenAI with their Sora, they might bring in a position that is very user friendly, and then that everyone's using that. So maybe Chris, you have your prediction. Maybe you wanted to review mine, or what do you think?
AI agents on the rise, AI becoming more political, and AI videos on also more proliferated. Yeah,
AI generated videos, the big thing this year. Yes.
got it. It's very funny. I have three completely different ones.
Go ahead.
So I believe that it is the year for enterprises to shine when it comes to AI. And what I mean by that is I think a lot of companies, big, large organizations are toying around with AI. They have set up teams, organizations. They are in partnerships with certain technology companies to really bring in AI into their organizations. And I believe that the first effect and impacts are measurable this year. So when it comes to revenue increase or cost cutting, etc., I think that is something that I would imagine a couple of CEOs boast in their earnings calls. So I think that's my prediction number one. My prediction number two is that I want to believe that this year is also the year where AI is getting more and more proliferated in basic research. And I think about molecules, I think about medicine and health. And that we also will see first results coming out of this, whether or not it translates into a new drug discovery, whether it translates into a new molecule that could cure certain diseases. I think that is really where I see AI can make the most impact when it comes to really large data sets and making sense out of it. I think the third one, and this one really comes from the a recent A16Z podcast, which is the intersection between AI and hardware. So we talk about robots, and I mean we've seen some prototypes last year, like Figure.ai. You have this robot that can distinguish and see stuff on a table and grab the apple because you're hungry and things like that. I want to believe that this year is going to be the year where we also will see a major push when it comes to AI plus robots and the different use cases that can come out of it, from self-driving cars being being safer or better or more efficient, to also other robotic use cases in manufacturing and logistics.
So AI in the enterprise will be shining or has the shine. There will be a demand for that. Is number one.
Or
The
return on
second,
investment, I would say, even.
so people were demanding what's the ROI behind. The second one is AI in research, so in life science and so on, we'll see it more and more. And AI in the real world, so robotics, self-driving cars, robot taxis, whatnot. We'll be seeing the technology being used in the physical world, our daily life, and not so on a computer. Fantastic. Then this means that we should do a 6 months from now, maybe like a review and see where do we stand, tally our prediction, and see are we headed in the right direction or things turn out to be very different. So, Chris, thank you so much for our discussion today. And for everyone, remember you can find us on chrisrothmax.com, where you can have access to all our episodes, our newsletter, and everything. Subscribe there. Otherwise, like this video, share your comments, and give us your thoughts on what you think about the development of AI. What are your predictions for this year? With that said, let's reconnect next week. Until next time.